Faians, the Fireboy comes, seeking fire. Baoen was once studying in the community of Faiyan. One day Faiyan said, "How long have you been with us?" Baoen said, "I've been in your community for 3 years. Faiyan said, "You're a junior person in the monastery. How come you never ask questions?" Baoen said, "I don't want to mislead you. I must confess. When I was with Master Yeju, I attained the peaceful bliss." Faiyan said, "By what words did you enter that place?" Baoen replied, "When I asked Master Yeju, what is the self of the practitioner, he said, 'The fireboy comes seeking fire.'" Faiyan said, "Good words, but I'm afraid you didn't understand them." Baoen said, "The fireboy belongs to fire. Fire seeking fire is just like the self seeking self." Faiyan said, "Indeed, you didn't understand. If the Buddha Dharma were like that, it wouldn't have come down to this day." Faiyan said, "Why don't you ask me?" Baoen then said, "What is the self of the practitioner?" Faiyan said, "The fireboy comes seeking fire." At that, Baoen experienced a great awakening. We'll get back to that. What is a koan? Public case, it means, but they're always about somebody's private realization, enlightenment. So what's the point of sharing them? What am I hoping to get? Sat here. What are you hoping to get? Where's the work? How do we make the koan work? Because these are records of moments of insight, realization. Okay, so let's have a little think about how the koan's actually put together. It works on the paradox of seemingly identical repetition. The fireboy comes seeking fire. He's not got it. He has got it. And there's a gap. We've been talking about gaps quite a bit recently. And in here there are actually 2 gaps. There's a gap, there's a long gap. He's been to see his original master. He's got it. He's understood. Then he moves to Faiyan's monastery. Spends 3 years. There are different versions of this koan. In some versions he's the practice leader by this point, senior monk. In this particular version he's more a junior. But he's been there 3 years. And he's a good monk. He's a serious monk. But then there's a second gap, because Faiyan questions him and says, "You haven't got it." And then there's the gap. Ask the question again. So we're working between seemingly identical statements with 2 gaps in them. What are we hoping to know? What are we hoping to understand? Well, let's think about knowing for a minute. Let's think about understanding. For instance, do you know how to ride a bike? Well, at the lowest level, you can recognise a bike and go, "Ah, bicycle." And you can understand that people ride around on them. Maybe they even organise races and things like that. Wow, okay, it's quite cool. I know about bikes. Or you could know a bit how they actually work. You know, the wheels act as gyroscopes, so instead of like walking on a tightrope all the time, faster you go, more momentum you have, less need to balance. Fantastic. You can understand how a free wheel works, how the chain drive works, how the brakes work to stop you. That's good. You could even learn how to take a bike apart, put it back together, change the bits, service it. That's a different kind of knowing about bikes, isn't it? That's beginning to be a practical knowledge of actually what a cycle is, how it works. But it's still not riding a bike. So you get on. You experience the unstableness, the instability. You experience the trepidation, the sense of, I'm going to fall over. But hopefully, slowly, you learn how to balance. You learn what gear to be in. You learn when to apply the brakes. You learn how to ride a bike. And then you know how to ride a bike. And that's great. You can. And in a sense, that's, often when we start riding a bike, we have stabilisers, don't we? Little wheels at the back, so you can't actually fall over. You'll fall, but you're caught. You'll fall, but you're caught. And of course we say, well, you don't really know how to ride a bike till you can ride it without stabilisers. So, okay. But then beyond that, what? Well, there's the knowing of forgetting, isn't there? There's not, I'm here on my bike and I'm aware of what's going on and I think I'll change gear now. There's just being the riding. I mean, we can say it loads of different ways. There's the being, just this being. And that's knowing how to ride a bike in an entirely different sense. So what kind of knowing are we actually talking about in this koan? A knowing that, a knowing how, or ultimately a forgetting. What's going on here? Now obviously there's not one way ever of interpreting a koan. And thinking about a koan, deciding, I think we might do the Fireboy comes seeking fire next. Okay. Remind myself of the actual koan, listen to a couple of Barry's talks, read a few more bits, just see what suggests. Becoming aware very quickly that different teachers have very different styles. They approach things in different ways. They're obviously teasing out in different ways altogether. But then students are very different too. Some students in Joko's image are like baby birds, just always pecking and begging, feed me, dear teacher, feed me. And I was always like that. Come on, I want the goods, I want to know. Feed me. And then others kind of, hey, I'm cool, I got this. Yeah, I'm sure it will all become clear in time. No worries. Just here. So, what kind of teacher and what kind of student have we got here? Well, one of the things which koans do is they give us a little glimpse of everyday life in the monastery. Many of these koans are supposed to have taken place in the 8th or 9th century originally, and then they get written down, they get commented on, they get written up in the great anthologies, 11th, 12th century. So we've got a few hundred years, so there's no sense that you're getting a direct view into anything. But this sense of how a Zen monastery works, studying, becoming part of a large community, gaining some kind of position within that monastery, going to see the teacher, not going to see the teacher. So this is, kind of unusual, but not that unusual. The famous, hugely famous Zen master Rinchi, or Rinzai in the Japanese tradition, founder, nominally, of the Rinzai lineage. One of the koans which is told about him is that, he didn't go and see the teacher for 3 years, and then his actual process of enlightenment or realization, awakening, whatever we want to call it, begins when he's sent there by the head monk. Go and see the teacher. It's time. You need to. But what's happening here? We'll go back in. How long have you been with us? I've been in your community for 3 years. You are a junior person in the monastery. How come you never ask questions? You never come and see me. You never come. Koan said, I don't want to mislead you. I must confess. When I was with Master Yeju, I attained the peaceful bliss. So he's got it. He's got it. I remember Barry saying once I could sit half of you on that side of the room. You're the ones who think they haven't got it. And I could sit the other half of you on the other side of the room. And you're the ones who think you have got it. He left it there. We'll leave it there. I don't want to mislead you. I must confess, when I was with Master Jesu, I attained the peaceful bliss. By what words did you enter that place? Koan replied, when I asked Master Jesu, what is the self of the practitioner? He said, the fireboy comes seeking fire. Even here there's an ambiguity, which we'll get back to, but for the moment, the fireboy in the monastery is the young novice whose job it is to light the lamps, see that the fire is correctly maintained. A dog's body, but a really important dog's body, like every role in the monastery. He needs to look after the fire. He needs to have the fire with him. He needs to know where the fire is at all times, where it is and where it shouldn't be. So what is Fayan saying? The fireboy comes seeking fire. But he has fire with him all the time. I'm looking for my true self. And yet, I have it with me all the time. I'm looking for my Buddha nature, and yet I have it with me all the time. This actually points me in the direction of a classic Buddhist story, a story from the Lotus Sutra, the hidden gem, the hidden jewel. Two guys, one of them, bit of a lad, has a friend who's a proper government official. Excellent. Goes round to see his mate, and they sit around drinking, doing stuff. They're having a nice time. Eventually, the party ends. They they keel over. I think the official goes off to his bed. Guy wakes up in the morning, and he finds that the official has been called away on important government business. So he's up at, whatever o'clock and off. Okay, fair enough. He leaves the house. It's a bit down on his luck. Nothing's really working. Nothing he tries to make any money works. He wanders here, he wanders there, wanders off away. Eventually becomes really destitute. Falls apart, goes to pieces, ends up more or less living in the gutter. Then one day, by chance, as in always with these stories, his government official friend is visiting the area where he is, and he sees him, and they recognise each other, and they meet. Hey, old friend, well met. You look dreadful. What's been going on? Well, it's like this, You idiot. Did you not realise? Did you not understand? I was called away on business. I didn't want to abandon you. So before I left, I took a great jewel, a great price, sewed it into the hem of your robe. That robe, you've had it with you all the time. You could have been living in luxury. You could have been eating, engaging in business, studying, whatever you wanted to do. Oh, calamity. And of course, this is the image, this is the metaphor of how we are constantly. We think we are lacking, and yet we are Buddha nature. We have Buddha nature. We don't need anything else. We don't need fixing. We are complete. We are perfect in ourselves. And this, I think, is the lesson that our monk gets from the teacher. The fireboy comes seeking fire. I have everything that I need. Where is the problem? There is no problem. And in a sense, we could take this slightly further. We could say, well, hang on, isn't this what Barry's always saying? It's not a problem to have problems. You don't need fixing. Everything, each moment, is perfect, just as it is. And so now he knows this. Now he might, the next morning, after he's had this great insight, wake up and think, but it doesn't feel that way. And that's somewhere where Barry goes with one of his talks on this, because a lot of students come to Barry going, I had this great experience. Oh, that's fantastic. I felt one with the universe. Oh, how marvellous. How do you feel now? Well, I've lost that feeling. I feel absolutely dreadful. But this isn't that. This is when it kind of works. Look, he's a good monk. As I say, in this other version of the story, he's the director of studies, you know. He's getting on with life. He's realised there's no problem. Nothing lacking. Fine. I'll just get on with my life then, won't I? I have the Buddha nature. I am the Buddha nature. Does his meditation. Attends the Dharma talks. Does his chanting. Performs whatever duties he's given within the monastery diligently. In fact, he's a perfect Zen student. And yet, Fayan, the teacher, notices in everything, in the way he picks up a cup, in the way he folds his hands in zazen, that he's one of, well, he's certainly not a baby bird anymore. Maybe he's a kind of fat, contented cat. He's got the cream. He knows what's what. Nothing else to do. Well, we could say he's complacent, couldn't we? I'm there. I'm there. I have arrived. This is actually something we say. So what's the difference between saying it in I have arrived and I have arrived because there's nowhere to go? Okay, what happens? Fayan asks him, why don't you come and ask me a question? Why do you just sit there, complacent? What's actually happening in your practice? I'm okay. I've got it worked out. I have Buddha nature. I am Buddha nature. What is the self of the student? The fireboy comes seeking fire. No problem. And of course, Fayan goes, that is not the deal. That is not the point. You idiot. You understand nothing. Go away. Leave now. The monk jumps up, heads for the door. I mean, I do. I've got it. I understand. Who is this guy? What? How can he possibly say this to me? And in a sense, that's his answer. What rises? What does Fayan conjure within him? His true self in this moment. The self of anger, the self of frustration, the self of insult, perhaps even the self of shame. Oh. And then in another version of the story, he's out on the path. But Fayan is the leader of 500 monks. How can I possibly, how dare I assume that I know I've got it when he thinks what? And so he turns around. This second gap. And in that turning, and of course that's a metaphor, we talk about a turning word, the word that shows me the difference between one kind of knowing and another kind of knowing. He turns. And as we say in our version of the 6th precept, he returns to the Master with openness and possibility. He's now not somebody in possession of something, which he considers the Master has as well. We hear, we look at each other, we know. No, it's not that. It's, who are you? Who am I? How can we meet? Truly, what is there to be said? And Fayan sees that he's now ready. He's now open. He's now ready to actually meet, to recognize each other. Ask me again. What is the true self of the student? The fireboy comes seeking fire. The fireboy comes seeking fire. Just like me. That's my true self in this moment. Do you understand? Well, we can reduce this. We're using words, so in a sense we have to. We can say, put the stress on the seeking. There's nowhere to get to. There's nowhere to go. You haven't arrived because you never left. The fireboy is the seeking. The fireboy is not the having of the fire or the not having of the fire. The fireboy is the maintaining, the lighting, the extinguishing. This is something which doesn't end. It's just the activity of being the fireboy. The other ambiguity I mentioned, weirdly, you can also translate the character for fireboy as fire god. So the fire god is a being made entirely of fire. He is nothing but the activity of fire. Now you can understand that in the other sense. Oh, I am fire. I was fire anyway. No need to do anything. No, it's the activity, the burning, which is it. Okay, another very traditional Buddhist, well, not actually even a story. This is the Buddha's alleged third sermon. Zen, and we're even talking about Buddhism in it. Whatever next. This is the fire sermon. Monks All is burning. And what, monks, is the all that is burning? The I is burning. Forms are burning. I consciousness is burning. Eye contact is burning. And whatever feelings arise with eye contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither pleasant nor painful, that too is burning. The pleasant is burning. The unpleasant is burning. Burning with what? Burning with the fire of lust, with the fire of hatred, with the fire of delusion. Burning with birth, aging and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, I say. This is fire. This is burning. And so what, in the context of this original sermon, what's to be done? Seeing thus, monks, the instructed noble disciple experiences revulsion towards the I, towards forms, towards eye consciousness. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. Hang on. Actually, it's all fire. What does nirvana, what does nibbana actually mean? The extinguishing, the putting out, the dampening down, the cooling. And yet here we're being told the Fireboy comes seeking fire. The fire god, who is nothing but fire, nothing but this burning, comes seeking fire. And in actual fact, it's the seeking which is the important bit. The process, the practice, the continuity. But note this fire sermon goes one better. The all is fire. Everything's fire. The Fireboy is fire. The world is on fire. It's all fire. It's not just this nugget of Buddha nature, this nugget of true original self. I am fire through and through. I am joy. I am suffering. I am happiness. I am sadness. I am boredom. I am frustration. I am peace. All is fire, as you are, as the world is, through and through. What is the world? What is the true self of all of us? Fire, this burning, not separate. So I can say, knowing that we're not separate, I could say seeing as not separate. I could say experiencing as not separate. And yet I and world disappear in the way that I and a bike do. When I and bicycle disappear, it doesn't mean we vanish into oneness. It doesn't mean we vanish into non-existence. It doesn't mean I don't stop at the traffic lights. It doesn't mean I don't watch out for other road users. It doesn't mean I'm not careful to match my gear to the speed and gradient that I'm experiencing. It doesn't mean. It just means not separate. It's all fire. The Buddha said it one way. Fayan says it another way. The fireboy comes seeking fire. This is our life. This is all life. Not separate. How will the seeking, how will the riding, how will the living be with us? And should I be asking the teacher a question?